Hi, welcome to episode 375 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Ravelry on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where every episode show notes will be, and I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, April 25th. It is the last week in April. It is delightfully warm here today, and the day has been kind of crazy. I am very late. It is 5:15 where I live, just outside of Kansas City. And I am a little bit discombobulated because of some things that happened at the end of my workday, but I definitely wanted to take the chance to sit down for a few minutes and make a podcast. So I hope you're doing well. My biggest news of this past week is that I went to Ply Away. Ply Away is a spinning convention hosted by J.C. Boggs Faulkner and Ply Magazine, which is a magazine about spinning. And the convention usually happens annually in Kansas City. This year was, I believe, the 5th or 6th edition, but of course we had taken a break. We missed years 2020 and 2021 for obvious reasons. So it was delightful to be back. It was wonderful to see so many spinners, so many spinning friends take some wonderful classes. There was a great vendor market. Everything was a little bit subdued this year. There were fewer vendors there. I think there were fewer attendees overall, but it was a lovely time, and to be honest, even with masks, it made me feel just a little bit like the old days. I suppose we have to keep our fingers crossed and hope that nobody gets sick now. I will say mask wearing was not quite as good as I had hoped it would be, although I wore mine for most of the weekend. I took an all-day class on Friday with Judith McKenzie, who is a very accomplished teacher, author, spinner. Her encyclopedic knowledge of all kinds of fiber and fiber customs around the world was lovely. The class that I took with her was a little bit informal. Basically, what we did is she gave us a variety of types of fiber to spin. Some of them we spun both worsted and woolen, and I did get to practice a little bit more on my woolen spinning, which was kind of nice. I sort of learned how to long draw a little bit. And then we talked about kind of the best preparation for each kind of fiber. So we spun some merino cashmere silk. She had us spin a little bit of a newer kind of silk called wild peduncle, which is the cocoons are a slightly different shape, and they come more from India rather than China, and that was super interesting. We spun a little bit of flax, and then sort of as a treat, we also spun a little bit of camel down, which is absolutely luscious and cloud-like. So we tried about 6 or 8 different types of fiber. She walked us through, spinning woolen yarns where all the fibers are combed the same direction. That is usually what you get when you have combed top. And worsted spinning often happens in sort of a short forward draw where you do not allow any of the twist to go back into your drafting triangle. I know for those of you who don't spin, this is probably a lot of technical knowledge, but it sort of refers to how you pull the fiber apart and how you feed it into the spinning wheel, and sort of where you pinch your fingers and how far, as you're treadling the spinning wheel, so spinning is basically taking some kind of fiber, whether it be animal or vegetable or synthetic, and adding twist to it to add strength and to make it hold together. You can do this in a variety of ways. You can do it as a single, which is just a single thread of fiber, but it obviously has lots of bits of fiber spun together. You can also do it in multiple ply structures. So depending on how tightly you spin each of your strands and then how tightly you ply them together, you can create everything from loose yarns to more structured yarns, or even think about boat rope and cable. I mean, all of it is spinning, depending on what fibers you are using. So we covered lots of different ways to sort of set things up, how methods by which you pull your fiber apart, which is called drafting, where you sort of pinch the fiber as it is going into the spinning wheel, so where you are allowing twist to enter your fiber, whether it is in front of your fingers or whether it's kind of all the way up into the fiber, and then the different methods of spinning. And I have talked about a little bit the difference between worsted and woolen spinning before. Worsted is best for fibers that are all going the same direction. It creates a denser yarn, but one that is also smoother. And then woolen spinning is where your fibers are going kind of all different directions, and it adds lots of air into the fiber. So you end up with a yarn that is a lot lighter and airier, but less even and also less strong. With woolen yarns, you can often break them very easily with your hands, and so the uses for each are different, what you would want to use them for and how sturdy they would be. So it was a lot of knowledge from Judith. I do feel like I hit some spinning achievements. I was spinning very, very thin. I started spinning singles on my Hansen mini spinner, which is an electric wheel. And for the most part, I have been using, for the last couple of years, I have been spinning on my Ashford Joy, which is a wheel with treadles. And then I have just been plying on my mini spinner. And so I am now spinning on my mini spinner again more. I have some singles that I've started, and I find that, as I generally find whenever I go to Ply Away or a convention, I come away bursting with creativity and interest in creating new things. And so I actually took a braid that I bought in the marketplace and put it on my wheel right away, even though I still have a spin going on my treadle wheel. But I am just sort of bursting with creativity and projects that I want to work on. So I think that's one of the best things about festivals, is that they just sort of inspire your creativity. It was delightful to be around people again, not without a little bit of nerve-wracking. But it was nice to be around people. I saw lots of people that I had not seen in person in several years. And then, so I took a class all day on Friday, and then on Saturday, my knit group went to lunch and to the vendor market. And that has been a tradition for us every year that Ply has been here, because we're just lucky that it happens to be here in Kansas City and local to us. And it was really nice. It almost felt like the before times. We did wear masks in the marketplace, but we did have some lunch out, and the restaurant was not super crowded, so we were able to eat together. And so it was a really, really nice weekend, but also a little bit exhausting because it was a lot of people and a lot of creativity and a lot of social interaction that I'm not used to. So, but overall, it was lovely. I will share a few of the things I bought at the marketplace, along with that will mostly be in spinning content. And then I also have some knitting content to share with you. So let's start the podcast proper now that I'm about 8 minutes in. I am drinking today some heirloom Bartlett pear tea from Harney & Sons. I am drinking it in my Naughty Birds mug. These are actual names of birds that sound a little bit naughty. So I've got the blue-footed booby, I've got the southern screamer, I've got the Andean cock of the rock. So this was a mug given to me by a friend of mine. And heirloom Bartlett pear is a flavored white tea from Harney & Sons, which is actually local. Well, I guess not. Harney & Sons this was produced out of New York. I thought they had some local, for some reason I thought they had some local manufacturing here in Kansas City, but I guess not. It contains white tea, pear pieces, apple pieces, peach pieces, pear flavor, nutmeg, ground cinnamon, white cornflowers, and peach flavor. So that is what I am drinking today. I find the pear is just really nice and light, and as is the white tea. So that is what I'm drinking. Let's talk about what I'm knitting. So the first project that I have on the go is one that you have seen several times before, and I am nearing completion. My hope actually is that by the time we talk next week, I will be done. That is the 10-stitch blanket. This is a pattern on Ravelry. It's a free pattern by Frankie Brown, and it was written for approximately a worsted weight yarn and size 9 needles. I'm using size 8 because my gauge tends to be a little bit loose, and it is called the 10-stitch blanket because appropriately it is worked in 10-stitch increments. Basically, it starts with a center square and works outward, and you are only working 10 stitches back and forth at any given time and attaching listening to the previous side of the work. So as you can see, I am in what is my next to last color. Last week when I chatted with you, I was starting on the blue and green. And this week I am in the green and brown, and I am about halfway through. Like I said, you work 10 stitches at a time. I have been working these on straights, which is the first time I've used straights in a really long time. But you knit back and forth across the 10 stitches, and as I said, at the end of each row you attach, and then there is a little bit of a mitered corner just to turn the corner there, and then you keep going. So this is worked in Zen Yarn Garden's Nightshade Worsted, which is a superwash merino worsted base, and it comes in skeins of 175 yards, and it is called Nightshade because one of the strands of the yarn is black and does not take the dye, and then the remainder of the yarn takes the dye, and as you can see here, it sort of creates a marled looking yarn. This is about half the skein, so I'm about halfway done. I'm hoping in the next day or two to finish this one, and then I have one final skein which picks up the brown and carries it with the yellow, which leads back actually to the center. So I started this with the purple and yellow at the center, moved out to blue and purple, then moved out to blue and orange, orange and red, red and blue, blue and green, and now green and brown. And I am actually at the point now where I cannot do a full round in the color. So as you can see, like here, I did not get any of the blue and green on this round. It stopped right here. I'm sorry, that's where it started. It stopped over here. So I didn't make a full round, almost, but not quite. So my guess is I probably have between 1.5 and 2 rounds left based on what probably about 1.5 rounds. And I, again, have not decided whether I'm going to stop kind of in the middle, if that's where I end up, or whether I'm going to square it off at a corner. But by the time I talk to you next time, this should be done. I have woven in my ends. There are not lots of ends to weave in, just exactly where I change colors every time. And I have woven them in, I just have not trimmed them yet. I will trim them after I block. I'm still deciding how I want to block this. This blanket actually lays pretty flat without blocking because it's sort of knit in the round and garter stitch. So, but I will probably wash it and block it. I can never decide whether to do a full wet block or just do a steam. Because it is superwash, if I do a full wet block, it will grow a bit, and so I suspect that is what I will do just to make sure that I get appropriate measurements. But it is a pretty decent sized blanket at this point. It is not my wingspan, but we're probably talking 4 feet at this point. It is a really nice lap-sized blanket, and of course you could increase or decrease the size by using more colors, by using additional skeins, or using fewer skeins, so it would be nice as a baby blanket or even as a larger blanket. I also had a friend who talked about turning it into a rectangle, where she decided not to knit the centerpiece as a square, but she knit it more as a rectangle and then just worked out from there. So it is very, very customizable. You're basically doing the same thing the whole time once you sort of get the hang of knitting the rows and doing the mitered corners, you are set. So hopefully you will only see this project one more time. I have enjoyed it. It has been a great knit, and it has been over the last 6 or 7 weeks. But I am ready to finish it and move on. And as Sunday is April 30th, my hope is that I can finish it in April and then start some new projects for May. Speaking of new projects, last week I promised you a new project, and I have made some great progress on that. So the 4 colors used in this blanket, the 8 new colors used in this blanket are actually new colorways from Zen Yarn Garden. And what they have done is they have taken these basic 8 colorways. The one that you don't see again is the brown and yellow, and then they have mixed them up in a variety of ways. So they have sort of these 8 standard colors which have names, and then they have combined the colors in multiple ways to create other colors that have, like, rather than just 2 colors, they have 4 or 5 colors in them, and then they have created speckles. So part of my project that I haven't shown you behind the scenes is they sent me 24 new colorways. and asked me to knit them up into 4" by 4" swatches. They are going to the H&H Americas show this summer, which is a new industry trade show, and they wanted to have swatches of all of the new colors in fabrics so that people who are interested in stocking them in their yarn stores can come up and see them in the booth. My assumption is that they will also take these to some consumer shows eventually, but the push right now is for the industry trade show this summer. So we only used about 5 or 6 grams in creating those little swatches, and the mini skeins themselves are 100 yards. They are 25 grams. They are 100 yards. They are 25 grams. So the thought it was that maybe I could use the leftovers in a project and create kind of one big project with all the colorways, which will be bright, colorful, and a little messy, but also just to show how they would work knit up and to show them kind of next to each other and in projects with each other. Because the point of this whole collection is that you can select several colorways from the collection and they should work together in projects because they were dyed using the same colors or bits of it, component colors. So the shawl that we decided to do was the Perfect Blend, which is a shawl by Casapinka, and it was originally a mystery knit along, and it called for either 12 mini skeins or 4 regular skeins of fingering weight. So I did have to do a little re-engineering of the pattern because I have 24 mini skeins, and I also had to make sure that I had enough yardage for each of the sections. I am going to be knitting the small shawl size, and that is because after I knit the swatches, I do not have enough left to complete the sections as written. That said, the sections call for about 100 yards maximum, so you could probably knit this shawl, if you decided to order all the mini skeins, you could probably knit this shawl in as closer to as written in the larger size, but I'm doing the smaller size because I have a little less yardage left. I hope that makes sense. I'll just show you what I'm working on. So the shawl is kind of a sampler shawl, and it is a bunch of sections of stockinette, mostly stockinette, it is sections of garter stitch, and then sections of stockinette or otherwise patterned. So for instance, this right here, this colorway at the top, is a blend of the orange and blue and the yellow and brown, and I cannot remember all the names, so I'm not even going to try. And then the color right after it is a speckle dye that is basically a natural colored yarn with speckles of orange, blue, yellow, and brown. The next one, and I'm not going to do this for all of them, but the next one is... the next one's a little different. The next one is orange and brown and purple and green, and technically... those colors don't, well, no, so it's the green and brown and then I guess purple and orange, but that's not one of the colorways that goes together. I don't know. And then a speckle that is the same colors. So I am moving through all of these colorways. This is kind of an orange and yellow and red and brown. So red and orange, it's red and orange and yellow and brown, but it also has a little bit of purple in it. So then followed by the speckle, and then the next one, which has blue and brown and yellow and green, and then that speckle. And then as we keep moving on, you'll notice as I move through, I'm waiting to get to it. Here we go. This is the first section that has a little bit of patterning, and it is a little bit hard to see on the speckles, although I did choose the speckles for these sections because I figured in the variegated it might be really hard to see what the patterns were. So I am continuing to work through the variegated and they'll probably be called one of a kind, but the variegated sections and then the kind of speckled sections, and match my colors together. And as you can see, I've gotten fairly far through. I am about halfway through the pattern in terms of number of sections. I still probably have more than half of the knitting to go because of course this is a triangular shawl that is increasing. So this is kind of an asymmetrical triangle. It starts up at a point and then progresses through this shawl. And so far I think it's really interesting and kind of a good way to use all of these colors together together and all the samples, and I really like that I have been able to go back and forth between the speckles and the colors. However, pretty soon this is going to change because I am getting towards the end of my variegated skeins and my speckled skeins, and eventually I will go back into these colors at the end, and I'm going to work them kind of in the rainbow order that you see them here. So I believe I'll start with the red and blue and then orange and red and work through those sections. So this is going to be kind of a fun sampler type shawl. My hope is actually that maybe I can finish this week. I would love to be able to start May afresh, but if this pattern lasts a little bit longer and goes into May, I guess technically it goes, does it go this way? No, it goes this way. So if this goes a little bit into May, I am not going to be at all upset because I literally just started this past week. So this is kind of fun. I'm hoping for like a fun color progression. Like I said, I started up here in the oranges and blues and then went through blues and reds and purples, and now I'm into kind of blues and greens and more oceany colors, and then I'm going to finish up in the reds again. So I will be taking careful notes about everything that I did and how I assigned the colors to this project. I will say this has been a fun project, although it requires lots of ends woven in no matter how many colors you use. Almost all of my ends are woven in the pattern. The pattern is divided into 6 clues because it is still, it appears as it was as part of the mystery knit along. And at the end of clue 1, she says, "Stop now and weave in your ends. You will thank yourself for doing it later." And so I have basically embraced that as my motto. So as I go through, every time I finish a clue, I stop and weave in my ends. So I have 3 or 4 sections that do not have ends woven in because I have just knit them in the last couple nights. And I have not had a chance to, or I just knit them last night or the night before and have not had a chance to weave them in yet. But I guess I have a little bit more than that. But the plan is, as soon as I finish the next clue, I will weave these in before I move to the next one, so that at the end, all I will have to do is block and then trim my ends. So lots of interesting stitch patterns. No section is longer than 10 to 20 rows. So, you know, if you get bored and you want to go back and do something different, that's great. Like I said, the only sort of annoying thing is that you have lots and lots and lots of ends. But like I said, you won't get bored with this one because it's changes pretty frequently. So that is what I'm doing. Again, that is Casa Pinka's Perfect Blend shawl, and I am knitting that in Zen Yarn Garden. These are in their super fun fingering weight, which is 100% superwash. I don't know if it's not superwash. It's 100% superfine merino. It is absolutely lovely. It is squishy. It feels extra special soft. And I don't know specifically what they're going to call. I have some names for these colorways. I don't know precisely how they're going to put them together, if they're going to sell them in kits, or what exactly is going to happen with them, but more details soon. You always get to see the projects first before everything comes out. So that is what I'm working on here. So these 2 projects I think should carry me to the end of April. I did some shopping this weekend, both at the festival and not at the festival. I will say that the festival this year, particularly the vendor market, was much more geared towards spinners than it has been in the past. In the past, they've had quite a few yarn stores, and so it kind of doesn't matter whether you're a knitter or a spinner. The marketplace is enjoyable for everyone. This year, there was definitely an increased presence of more spinning fiber and not as much yarn, which is fine because it is a spinning festival. But so I was sort of waiting to buy yarn for my niece and nephew's birthday sweaters until I saw what was at the marketplace, because I figured that if I found yarn at the marketplace, I would buy yarn for their sweaters, and then if I didn't, I would purchase it separately. I did not find yarn for them this year. There were a number of wonderful indie dyers and beautiful skeins of yarn. Honestly, my only problem, and it's not entirely a problem, but my only issue was that both Roxy and Miles are now getting to be more people-sized, and so they require between 750 yards and 1,000 yards for a sweater. Particularly, there's a sweater coat that I want to knit Roxy, and I'm going to need almost 1,000 yards to do it. And I'll be honest, spending indie dyed prices on sweater quantities for my niece and nephew, when oftentimes I wouldn't necessarily throw that yarn in the washer and the dryer, and also when they're going to outgrow them quickly, when they could lose them. I hope not. They've never lost anything. I've knit them so far. It's just not quite in my price range, and it doesn't entirely make sense to me. Which is not to say that I don't believe that pricing for indie dyed yarns is justified. I really do, and I love knitting with indie dyed yarns, and I will happily buy a sweater quantity for myself because I will wear that sweater for freaking ever, and I know how to take care of it. So, but I do try and knit for the children in more easy care fabrics, things that my sister can throw in the washer and dryer, and honestly at a price point that's a little bit less. So it turned out that Eat Sleep Knit was actually having a sale this weekend for their 10K customers, and that is Eat Sleep Knit does these yardage marathons, and every yard that you buy from them counts towards your yardage total. And so over the years I have bought enough yarn to be part of the 10K club, and I had a discount, and then it turned out I actually had a credit there. So when all was said and done, I got 2 children's sweater yarn qualities for a little over $100, which was precisely in my range. And so I did get slightly nicer yarn than I had anticipated, but I also did not spend a ton on it. So I bought yarn for them. It's not here yet. It will be here. May, I think, will be for starting to knit their sweaters. And then, of course, I will have some other samples to work on as well. So I will have more to show you. There will be some new projects coming. And my hope is also that I'll crank out a couple hats in the next few weeks because I would like to continue working on my hats for the winter to donate to Wool Aid, and then also to donate to a couple causes that I support with knitting hats each year. And so my goal is to sort of knit all year long and then donate them in the fall. So that is what I'm working on there. I will show you just a little bit of stash enhancement that I got in terms of yarn. So I bought a few skeins of yarn. I said there was not much yarn, and there was not a lot of yarn, but there were a few skeins that I couldn't resist having come home with me. One of the sets of yarn that I bought is brushed Surrey alpaca. This is a 74% Surrey alpaca, 26% silk blend, and it is from Apothecary Fibers, who I absolutely love. Her spinning fiber is immaculate. I have spun a ton of her fiber. I also knit my Nanny Swaymo this past year. I have to think about what it's called. I'm blanking on the name of the sweater right now, but it was the one in that gorgeous, delicious pumpkin orange, and that was from Apothecary Fibers as well. It will come to, the Nadia pullover, and that is by Vanessa Smith Designs. I'm very proud of myself. So I got these 3 skeins. It is not a named colorway, but this is called Halo Lace Brushed Surrey Alpaca Lace, and it is in this gorgeous teal colorway. And you may remember, way back when, I have also ordered some yarn from her in her teal colorway, and so this might become a love note or some other sweater. I have been eager to try knitting with something fluffy, and normally I can't find something fluffy that feels nice against my skin. It just makes me itch uncontrollably, and this does not. So I'm willing to take a chance, and I'm going to try it. This will be put into the stash for something later. Maybe I will work on this for Nanny Swaymo this year. This one is definitely going to ripen in the stash a little bit. So that was from Apothecary Fibers. And I will put links to all the people I purchased from in the show notes so that if you are interested in purchasing from them, you will be able to. The other skein of yarn that I bought is a skein from 316 Dye Studio, which is made here in Kansas. And she has had a couple trunk shows at our local yarn store, and I've just never made it in. But this skein screamed to me. It is a Tweedy Flecked skein of DK weight in the cranberry colorway. And it is a superwash merino, 85% superwash merino, 15% Donegal Nep, DK weight 231 yards, and like I said, it's from 316 Dye Studio. And they had some gorgeous fiber as well, but this just screamed that it wanted to be a hat. So that was kind of yarn enhancement for myself. As I said, everything was very much indie dyed, and so I did not buy any sweater quantities this time because I have quite a few sweater quantities in stash, and now I want to knit everything under the sun, and I have too many projects coming up ahead of me to cast on everything. So, of course, a fiber festival is not without fiber. So I'll show you what I got at the in my fiber selections, and then I will show you my finished spin that will be going up in the shop in just a couple days. I just need to pull it off the bobbin. I don't know if it's going in the shop. I haven't decided yet. This one might stay with me. I can't decide. One of the dyers at the show was Gritty Knits, who I have seen her on Ravelry and I have followed her on Instagram for years, but I have never had the chance to buy from her. She is very much a dyer after my own heart in that she dyes crazy, bright, gorgeous colorways. And as you know me, I like saturated color. There is nothing pastel about me. I like jewel tones and even neons and just make it bright and colorful. So the first braid that I got from her that is just going, it already jumped on the wheel. This is the second half of it. It is called Calm Down and it is on BFL fiber and it is rich teals and blues and purples. I'm just trying to get this all for you, and greens and a little pop of yellow. So this is just some lusciousness. It will be going in the shop for sure, but this is kind of an ocean, cool water tones braid, but it's also got a little bit of pink and some other colors in here. Every time I spin this, I see all the different colors. And this is being spun on my Hansen mini spinner, which I have been spinning really thin on, so it's going to take me a little while, but I also expect I'll get some great yardage. The other braid that I bought from Gritty Knits, wait till you see this. Is that not amazing? It's blowing out the camera. It is so bright. It is red and pink and a little bit of orange and some blue and a lot of turquoise. It is a 4 ounces of superwash merino in the colorway Kaleidoscope, and I cannot wait to spin this one up either. So this will be coming up, and this will definitely be for the shop. Almost everything that I bought at the Ply Away market will be going into the shop. I just bought some bright colors from vendors I wanted to try. So the final braid that I bought, and technically it's not the final braid, but it's the only thing I brought to show you. I did buy 2 bumps of fiber in natural colors, and I didn't bring them to show you because they're not that exciting. But I bought them in a slightly different fiber put up. Everything that I am showing you in fiber is comb to top, which means the fiber has been processed. They have all been combed in one direction, and they are very well suited for creating worsted yarns. Remember at the beginning, I talked to you about how worsted yarns have all the fibers combed in the same direction. They are very smooth, they are very even, and they are kind of dense. And those are the kinds of yarns that I spin. If you want to see what those look like, you can look in my shop. They are gorgeous, and it is my preferred spinning method. So everything that I bought was primarily comb to top for the shop, but I did buy 2 technically it's usually called roving, or these were called sliver, and that is where the fibers are sort of loosely carded together, but they are not all combed the same direction. And so they are fluffy, and they are meant to be spun with lots of air, and like I said, woolen, where you're doing a long draw, where you're adding lots of air into the fibers. I would like to practice that spinning, but it is not really my best spinning, and so I bought some fiber to kind of practice those skills with. I don't know what I'll do with it eventually. I bought enough that I could do a 2-colored, sort of natural colored shawl, and so maybe I will do that as part of my practice. I always end up trying to buy something at Ply Away to sort of use the new skills that I have learned, and sometimes I am more or less successful. I have a few things from past Ply Aways that I'll probably try and pull out and spin soon. I know I do have a braid with some corresponding dyed locks. They're both the same colorway, and that was from an art spinning class that I took. And I also have another big, crazy, gorgeous bat, and that would also be good for doing some woolen spinning. I want to learn to woolen spin because I love the idea of really lightweight yarns and airy yarns that provide just gorgeous lightweight garments, and they tend to be very warm because they trap pockets of air, but because they spin kind of uneven, I really like my even, colorful spins. So the final braid that I purchased was a braid from a new to me dyer, and most of these were new-ish to me in that I had bought from Apothecary before, but I think everything else that I bought at the market this time was from a new to me vendor, in that even if I knew of them, I had never purchased their products before. This is from Desert Panda Fiber Arts, and this is a glorious merino silk braid, and it is kind of got some cool, again, watercolors, greens and blues and purples and a little bit of pink. And the thing that struck me so much about this is oftentimes when you dye fiber, well, a couple things. Silk and merino sometimes take the dye differently. It strikes differently on them. And what I can't tell actually is precisely how this was carded together, whether the silk was carded in the braid before or after the dyeing. But a lot of times when I see silk in braids, the silk is actually undyed. It is white. And so it comes out kind of in white clumps or white sections that make the braid almost look a little frosted. I think I've talked about this before. And the thing about this braid that I thought was so interesting is you can see the bumps of silk in this braid, but you can see that they are dyed in different colors. So like sometimes there's some dark blue silk in this light blue portion, and then some teal silk in this portion. And what was the other one? Oh, there's some purple silk in the pink section. And I thought that was so gorgeous, and I have just not seen that before. So I am interested in spinning this one up. And this one is very much my colors, but will probably go in the shop as well. So that was sort of why I purchased that one. So let me show you my finished spin, and it's not even entirely finished because I haven't pulled it off the bobbin yet. But this is the spin that I was working on before. And this is a very full bobbin. I could not get much more on this bobbin. This is Into the World. It's element number 5, or the 5th element is actually what it was called. And might have been element number 5. I think it's different than the movie, and now I'm having trouble remembering which is which. This did sort of what I wanted to and sort of what I didn't want it to. Remember that I spun these, I spun both braids more or less straight through. One of them I divided in half, but then spun straight through, because I wanted sections of the color repeats where the color lined up. So where the oranges and reds lined up with the oranges, reds, and the pinks and purples and the blues sort of lined up together. But I also got a lot of areas where the colors overlapped. And so I can't decide whether or not I like how this has come out. I need to wind it off and count the yardage, and I'm going to try using my new electric eel yardage counter. So I'm excited about that, and I will have more to report for you on this next week. I am really pleased because it spun really thin and it came out really nicely, and I suspect it's going to have great yardage. The only thing I haven't decided is whether I'm going to save it and turn it into something for myself, or whether I'm going to put it in the shop. So more about that next week. And I do have another braid that I'm adding to my shop this week, and then I will be focused on spinning for the shop for a while. So if you're interested, that is the Corner of Knit and Tea on Etsy. And like I said, I will have some new spins going up there shortly. So thank you for sticking with me. This podcast episode was a little longer, but I had lots to show and share. I hope that you are having a wonderful week, that you are staying healthy, and that you are finding creative energy in your pursuits, and maybe you are inspired to cast on something new. By the time I see you, it will be May, and hopefully I will have new projects to show and share. I wish you a wonderful coming week, and I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.